Check out those clouds. It's just a beautiful day. Perfect day for this.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, good to see you back on the water, Ryan.
Hey. It's here.
The Fab Rats and Merlin and Jimmy are in your yard right now.
Right here.
It's like a good time. No, that'd be a good time.
Welcome back.
It's the after.
It's after the run. This is our video after the run.
We're gonna tell you some stories.
Well, there's stuff that happened that we didn't put on camera or didn't get on camera.
It didn't get edited in, or it did. Yeah, it just didn't make camera.
Or there's questions that people had, like, how did this all come out? Whose idea was this crazy mess?
So here's the reality. We were at the dunes probably, what, 10, 12 years ago?
It was a while.
And all of us as buddies, we go down and we do trips about every year, every other year. And we did state back in the day, one of these days we need to go hit the river.
Yeah.
And by hit the river, we meant we need to go take some jet skis.
Yeah, because we weren't going to put the boats in there.
No, absolutely no. That boat's not getting that sludge on it.
No.
Anyway, we always wanted to put in from Kansas City and head all the way to the Mississippi River. That was just one of the guy dreams, the bucket list things we wanted to do.
It didn't sound like it was that far.
No, it didn't. And the logistics didn't seem that horrendous. Hey,
No.
we just carry a tank of fuel with us and fuel up as we go.
No big deal. Anyway.
Fast forward 12 years.
It evolved. And here's a couple of things that happened in the evolvement. I said, actually it was probably a year ago, Ryan said, let's do it.
We have to do it. We're not getting any younger. Let's hit the river.
So he made the decision and said, pull the trigger. So I did. And then my first question was, how big do you want to do this? Is it just Ryan, me, Kyle, Brad, just, Josh, maybe just our
core group of guys?
Or do we go big?
Yeah.
And Ryan said, oh, no, if we're going to do it, we got to do it right.
It's got to go. It's got to be all out.
And it was all out. So I pulled the trigger on a lot of things.
Yeah. And I was not anticipating this, but Ben did. He went above and beyond. I'm not going to lie. So kudos to Ben for this, but it also created quite a cluster.
If I had known that each ski was going to make this trip exponentially harder, then I would have thought twice. But I was like, the more the merrier, the more the merrier. And then, man, over 1,200 gallons of gas later, we're like, this is big.
So 1,200 gallons?
At least.
And we weren't anticipating that, right?
Well, we had some thoughts, and we were hoping things, and kudos to the people that came by and dropped gas off. It was a help, a huge help.
Yeah.
But there was still a big gas bill, and it was still a logistical nightmare. So while we're talking about gas, let's talk about how this went down. So I had designed checkpoints.
Yes.
And I had figured out if we just top off a few skis here and there and just keep moving, it should be fine. And it would have worked. The problem was...
Well, we had a couple of guys in our group that their whole goal was to just haul ass through.
Until you run out of gas, and then fill up, and then go.
The problem is, a couple of times they ended up on the shore, not anywhere near fuel stations.
Yeah, so you'll see in Merlin's video that there's a part where it seems like he's pretty frustrated about running out of gas. And he did, he ran out of gas. What happened was we had talked that morning about going from camp to Jeff City, and then the next stop would be, I don't remember where, but we had designed where we knew we could go about 40 to 50 miles. So the truck, they left.
They were the
got-
first ones gone by 15, 20 minutes.
And mind you, that's what I would have done if somebody else was setting up camp and taking down camp and cooking and doing all of that stuff. We were in charge of all that. Plus,
But we were in charge of the logistics, the stops and everything. So
and we were trying to run all of this behind the scenes,
they didn't know where they were going.
and they didn't know the river. They didn't know where the stops were. We told them, but when you're on the river, and this is to help them. When you're on the river, it looks nothing like the map.
No, and there are some areas that you actually have to pull off the river and go
And come
upstream
back
in
into-
another river.
Yeah.
And you don't see it as you're going by.
Correct. But anyway, we left the morning. They took off. They wanted to be out first. They figured when they run out, they get to the first stop, they'll fill up first, and then they can get going. They were on a mission to make it to the Mississippi, and I don't blame them.
No, I don't either.
But once they left, the trucks weren't quite ready to leave. They had to pack up some camp stuff and gear, and the Sea-Doos were gone. I'm looking, and I'm like, crap, this isn't going to work.
No.
They need to wait. Wait at Jeff City. We'll be there. So the first truck
But
left.
you cannot get a hold of guys on the river.
No.
You can't hear cell phones. Sometimes cell phones don't even
No.
go through. In fact, 90% of the time, cell phones didn't go
and
through.
the radios we had, nobody was answering. So,
So they were gone without connection and communication.
and they hauled booty. They took off. They hauled booty. Now, from the campsite, it's kind of weird driving in there. It takes like 40 minutes to get anywhere. So from the campsite, it was 43 minutes.
And we
To
had
travel.
we had this down to a minute, so we knew how to get to each of the stops.
And we figured it would take them probably an hour to drive that on the skis. So there was plenty of time. But they took off first. There was gear to be loaded. Things happened. The truck left about 15 minutes later than it needed to. And they hauled. And they arrived at Jeff City Ramp about 3 minutes past where they went by. And you can see on their video that they stopped kind of by the Capitol building. And the guys got to the ramp and they could see them down there, but they'd already gone past. So they missed the fuel stop. It wasn't that we didn't have fuel.
So our trucks were pulling in as those guys were
they
headed
were
down
going
river.
by. Yep. So
They missed that fuel stop. Sorry.
you have to stop and fuel up, otherwise you're going to run out. So that's what happened there. Not that it was ill planned and sometimes you just can't see the ramps. Sometimes they're on the left, sometimes they're on the right, and you
That's
got to
true.
go back.
Well, and you get eager to finish out, and so you're not really thinking about fuel. You're just go, go, go
Plus,
mindset.
once we came around that corner to Jeff City, all you could see was the bridge and the Capitol building, and that was mesmerizing. It was really cool.
It was right up to the right of us and in front of us, and the ramp was actually to the left.
back to the left.
Back to the left. And so it really threw you off. It threw me off the first
When we came around, I'm like, oh, sweet, where's the ramp? And then I had to look for it. But anyway,
Yeah.
so fuel, we had to change plans from day one to day two. And we moved from, several cans and trucks, those were just the backups, to using our big tank in the big truck and them going to specific spots to fuel.
Because that
up
was
everybody.
what, a 50-gallon
It
tank?
was a 50-gallon tank, and then they had, another 5 or 6 cans of gas in there too. So, okay, going back to the idea, I would blame Ryan for the idea and probably blame me for the planning. So together we made this crazy mess. The rumor out there was that this was planned by Merlin or Paul or those guys that came up with the idea, and we just helped them.
No.
We actually came up with the idea, started planning it, and then went out and invited Paul, which he invited Merlin, which was a good thing.
And Jet Ski Jimmy.
And Jimmy.
And then we ended up inviting
Some of
Bob.
our friends. Yep. Oh, my brother.
Yeah.
My brother heard about it and thought it was pretty cool. And I'm like, you're not going to make it. Not on that little thing. But he did. He made the whole trip. Anyway, so we came up with the idea, planned it. And you know what? There was a lot that went into this trying to figure out. It's a tightrope because you're like, Paul and Merlin, they like to fly by the seat of their pants. And you can see that in the way that they ran the river. They don't want to be cumbered down by so much planning and all this. But you had to have stuff in place. We had to keep people safe. We had to have first aid kits and fuel and tools and all that kind of
Food, water, you name it. I mean, there were so many logistics behind the scenes, and I'm kind of like Paul and Merlin that way. I just want to
go
rip it and grip it and rip it, you know. But with that many people, we had to make sure it was done right. So,
and there was a lot of people in support vehicles, and some of the stuff that you guys didn't see was all of the craziness that happened with the trucks. Like, they would go to a stop, and then they'd leave to go to the next one, and then they'd get called back.
So I actually had an instance where my ski went down. Mm-hmm. I was 3 miles down the river. Those guys had already left. I was the last ski to go. And so the trucks left the ramp.
Everybody was gone.
And when my ski went down, freaking Josh, thanks Josh. Josh is like, hey, I got a good idea. Let's go back up river. So we went back up river in order to get the trailer back with the skid on it, because we knew it was crapped out at that point. We had to call the truck. Well, the problem is the truck was already.
They were already.
They were headed. They had leapfrogged the one ramp that was next, and they were headed to the following ramp.
Yep.
So we had to have them come back to the ramp, and that ended up being a nightmare.
Yeah, because by them going back and rescuing you, then they're late at the other ramp, and the people that were ahead. And I want to address this too. So it seemed like we were always at the back of the pack. And I don't know if people thought that, oh, well, they have faster skis, they can catch up quick or whatever it was. We stayed back because we're in charge. We had to make sure that nobody got left behind.
So that would have been a suck maneuver on our part had we just bolted and been number one. And I'm glad Paul and Merlin and Jet Ski Jimmy could go do that, because that's what they were invited out to do, was to go ride the river. The logistics of it are that we're in charge, so we kind of have to sit back. We can enjoy it a little bit, but we have to make sure everybody makes it to the ramp.
There were times where we had Brad or Kyle or somebody kind of hang back for us and take up the rear to make sure everybody was there, and then we could kind of catch up. That first day, there was a moment where we were hauling. Like, you and I were going as fast as we possibly could. And we made up probably an hour and a half, which was amazing. You, me, and Tyler and Caden, we were just
flying.
We were going as fast as.
And we had the fastest skis. So.
And we caught up to Paul, and we caught up to those guys, or that was day 2. We did it again.
Yeah, twice.
But anyway, it was, whew. So that's why we hung back, and sometimes we weren't on everybody's video because we were trying to handle logistics.
Now, I've got to give a shout out to my buddies that came on the trip. Our buddy, not my buddies, our buddies.
Thanks.
We're friends. We're all friends. So our buddies that came on the trip with Josh and Brad and Kyle.
Yeah. So Josh, first of all, he was the one that fixed the Tiger Shark so Tyler could ride. Brad fixed yours.
Mine and Kyle's and all of his.
And all of his.
So he had 5 skis he had to fix.
And Josh started with a ski that didn't run.
So he had to fix his and yours.
And he worked on Kyle's a little bit, and he worked on mine. So.
And then Kyle was there to help out with anything we needed help with.
He was a good person to have. He had a super fast ski. We knew it could tow people too, because it towed mine.
And he did. He towed a lot of people.
He towed you right into the river, didn't he?
I'm not even going to talk about that. Anyway, unfortunately, it ended up biting him in the rear end on the end of day 1.
Yeah, his poor ski. Now, his ski's fine. The motor's fine. The ski is fast. It is what it is. It just took on so much water that it flooded, and it wasn't able to go. So we parked it.
We're going to let Kyle tell you a little bit about his story and what happened the night that he went down. Unfortunately, he was the last one on the river, and everybody went on by.
Yeah.
And we didn't recognize it till
poor Kyle.
Much later.
So day 1 was, we'll set it up and then we'll put Kyle in here. But day 1 was a long day, and you could tell people were wearing thin at the end of the day.
There were some hangry people. There were some attitudes, just
Can you imagine getting to camp and having to just set everything up though? That would have been horrible.
Yeah, so that didn't happen, thank goodness.
You guys saw in Merlin's video, he walked up the stairs from his ski, and up at the top, all the tents were set up, and they were starting to cook dinner. So we were trying to be as accommodating as we could for everybody.
Because that was what, 10, 12 hours on the river?
Oh yeah, it was a long
I mean, saddle sore and
and just upset.
upset with skis going down and you name it.
I think the worst part was we thought we were closer than we were. And then when you finally realize that you're not there, you're just frustrated.
Well, because you look back and you're like, we could have taken less time at each ramp. We screwed off all day.
But we had to sort that out. We figured that out day one and we adjusted day two. But we didn't film at camp very much until after dinner.
Well, and it was dark at that point.
It was dark, but I mean, I don't think anybody really filmed. They were ready to unwind a little bit, relax, eat.
Yeah, the happy-go-lucky attitudes that you normally see on everybody's videos, that persona had come to a dull roar.
And
at
we
best.
were like forefront of that because
Yeah.
we didn't feel like it either. So it was cool though. When I showed up at camp and I walked up the ramp and Merlin was there, you took off to go save Paul.
Go get those mother effers.
So Merlin and Jimmy and Ben were there and they walked up and they went to the little store and they bought drinks, cold drinks, and then they sat down at the picnic benches and it overlooks the river.
Oh, so they got to see the sunset and do all that?
It was funny because they bought drinks, they sat down, and they watched the sunset, and Merlin looks over and he goes, you know what, this place does not suck. So it was good because whatever we were frustrated about, whatever was happening, wasn't affecting them, and that was important. Because,
So I'm glad the majority of that came on us.
Yeah.
Because we were the ones hosting it.
But it didn't suck. I mean, it was a nice place. There was a ton that happened. Like, we were supposed to be in a different part of the campground, separated from everybody, but the power went out, and they had to fix it, and so they moved us, and
We were stuck in between everybody and right next to the road.
we had no idea if we were going to have all the camping gear.
That's
We
true, too.
left that morning, got on the river, and still didn't know if we were going to have tents. Cole was driving your wife's car.
The Denali, yep.
It made it the whole trip, maybe twice, 3 times. I don't know. Because
back
it went
and
back
forth a
and
lot.
forth. We left in the morning, loaded him up with camping gear, and told him, go back to the office and wait on UPS.
Well, and the reason he needed to wait for UPS is the majority of our tents and gear
Didn't show up yet.
Hadn't come. Good old UPS somehow dropped the ball. Go figure with the strikes that's going on. But
Man, it was close because we almost didn't have enough gear for everybody. But he came back, stuff showed up, he loaded up, headed to camp, set up all the tents, started getting everything set, which was big. So that when we got there, it was just, let's go, eat, let's relax, let's catch up, let's figure out where Kyle went.
Now I will say, he did kind of drop the ball on not knowing how to start that frickin' burner.
That's true.
The food could have been ready, so that was kind of a cluster, but it happens.
But we all ate, and it was good. In the
It-
end, it was good.
Yeah, and it was some of the best burgers we've ever eaten,
Yeah.
and hot dogs because we
Felt
were
good.
we were wore out.
We were wore out. But it was nice to sit down and unwind. And we didn't film a ton. We filmed the bug thing, but that's about it. But just hanging out with, Paul and Merlin and those guys and their kids. It was cool. It was cool to hang out with them.
Now at camp, we didn't get this on camera, but we all zonked out, right? Except for one frickin' person. Kevin Gertz. You suck. He had his truck. He had one of the
Chase vehicle.
chase vehicles, and he was just probably 5 car lengths outside of camp, but right next to the road, right by where your tent was, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
He was.
mine was the next one. About every 30 minutes, that sucker would fire off his truck to get his AC running.
He said it was to charge people's phones.
He's
and
full
stuff.
of crap.
But
He's a prima donna. It was all about.
Oh, man.
It was all about getting AC, and he'd fire that truck off, and we'd be wide awake.
Yep.
Then not only that, somebody pulled into camp, pulled some shenanigans of their own, right?
Yeah. I think I missed most of that. But
I
anyway.
did not. Somebody revved their engine for 2 or 3 minutes and then ripped out of camp, and you could hear them for.
Good thing you didn't have your gun.
Well, I was pissed.
Another side note about Cole, we did have a hiccup. Cole, because he had the Suburban, once he packed up camp, we told him we're going to need all those seats. So we sent him back to Kansas City.
This was kind of a big deal, and it was frustrating from our end.
But he was packed to the roof. So he went back to the office and to Ryan's house and dropped a whole bunch of gear off. Unloaded the car, got it free, because once we hit the ramp at the end, those guys have got to be taken to their hotel so they can go to the airport.
So we told him, hey, get rid of all the camping gear.
Yep.
Get it out of the truck, or out of the Denali. Make sure
did.
you've got room.
He got rid of all the gear.
All the gear.
So poor Ben Cox, his
Paul's brother.
his backpack was in that car. They took off so quick in the morning, nobody went through to make sure that their stuff was accounted for, and his backpack and all of his stuff was in there.
Well, and then when we get there, and Ben's like, "Where's my bag?"
Well, this is when it's dark. It's time for them to go to the hotel at the end of everything, and it's dark. It's what, 9 o'clock, 9:30.
Yeah, 9:30 ish.
And he goes to look for it, and it's not in the car. And we look at everything, and we couldn't find it.
Well, then I try to call my wife, which of course I'm not home, so she's out with my girls. She's out on the town, and she's not home. She's like, I don't know what got dropped off.
We couldn't verify where it was, but
We were pretty sure.
we were pretty sure. So behind the scenes, we had Josh's son from Kansas City go get the bag, start driving towards St. Louis, and then his father met him on the way back, halfway, got in the car with him, went and took him the bag, got him the bag that night.
Took Ben the bag
Yep.
at the hotel.
Because his license...
He wouldn't have been able to get on the plane at 6 in the
Yeah, he
morning.
wouldn't have been able to get on the plane, so he had to have it. So he took it back, and then they drove back, got back at like 3 or 3:30 in the morning, which was late. Poor
Yeah,
guys.
and they had to work,
Anyway, he got his bag. He got on the plane. He got home.
and I'm glad of it.
Let's talk skis a little bit. So, would we have gotten different skis knowing what we know now?
You know, if it was a one-day run and we were just out screwing off and those types of things, I would have continued with the skis that we had, and I would not have mentioned that we get the crappiest skis and just run the river. I would have said, hey, we're doing 300 and some odd miles. It probably,
Somehow that never clicked.
yeah, it never registered. I mean, what people don't realize, most jet skis only get run 300 miles in their lifetime.
2 or 3 seasons.
So it's very rare to run a trip 300 and something miles on a ski. So the fact that we had old skis, yeah, I would have done it differently.
It's amazing that we didn't have more trouble. I mean, we had our share of trouble. I don't know how many we pulled up on the beach and drained them or had to fix them, or man, it was a lot. It really was. You see these guys that actually do run the river and have their YouTube channels or do whatever. They're single, 1 or 2 people, and they have all this gear attached to it, and they have these big fancy brand new Sea-Doos or whatever, and they make it.
Well, you could do it in a day if you were literally had the fuel set up and ready to go, and you were running 70 miles an hour down the river.
Man, that river is brutal on these things too. It was hard on those poor skis.
Well, even Merlin ended up sucking something up into one of his jets. So there's stuff in the river. It's a rough river to ride. That's for sure.
And you saw the boat. That was a decent boat, and it was on one of those jetties, just flipped over. So, all in all, the skis that we had, except for the red one, did really well, surprisingly well, and they made it. That was a long trip, and I wouldn't have guessed it was going to be that long. But there were times where I'm just sitting there thinking, it's got to be around this next corner. It's got to be around, and then 15 corners later, I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know when it is.
Yeah.
I don't know when we're going to get there.
You would, in your mind, say, there's no way it could be any further.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a lot further.
It was.
Because some of those fuel stops were, 20, 30, 40 miles in between?
Yep.
And we would use every last drop of fuel to get to those stops.
On that blue ski, I was watching that gas and oil gauge go down, and I'm like, I'm down to my last bar, and I think I still got 20 miles. There's no way.
Yeah.
but it worked out. I didn't run out. Did you run out?
I ran out at the end.
You ran out at the end. Oh, that's right.
I half-assed it at the last fuel up, thinking, oh, it's not that far.
Yeah.
One of those
Seriously,
circumstances.
you think it's not that far, but man,
I
it's
literally,
just a ways.
I put 5 gallons in, thought, hey, it's not that far, and I ended up crapping out about 1.5 miles from.
Dude,
I could have floated it.
you could have. Man, it's a long ways. So if you're thinking about doing something like that, it's a long ways. Now we probably could have done just like a 1-day or a 2-day trip and really not gone as far and probably enjoyed it more. But it was something that we wanted to get from one side of the state to the other, and we did.
You know how us guys are when we say we're gonna do something, we go and do it, and even if it sinks us. But
Now, don't get us wrong. This was timed and planned, and we knew it was going to work. We just thought it was going to work a little bit better, at least day 1. Day 2 worked how it should have. We were out early. We were going. We weren't messing around. We weren't taking all of the time. And we made it actually an hour earlier than we thought after we replanned it. So day 2 was good. Day 2 was easier. Plus the food didn't hurt.
the food didn't suck, huh?
No, the food didn't suck.
Thanks,
We
Merlin.
had sandwiches again for lunch, but this guy showed up and it was much better.
It was phenomenal.
It was much better.
Hey, but we now have a new term in our
Yeah.
pockets thanks to Merlin.
It doesn't suck.
It doesn't suck.
This doesn't suck. There's other ones that we can't say on
Yeah,
YouTube.
he's a colorful character. I sure love Merlin.
So we hadn't met Merlin or Jimmy
No,
until they showed up. Now, I'd talked to him a bunch. We'd FaceTime. We'd done Zoom meetings and whatnot, but we hadn't met him in person. So this is Merlin, the tow truck off-road record games champion that also runs the only Cummins-powered boat on Lake Havasu, which I just think that's awesome. I'm sure he pisses a bunch of people off.
good.
But he's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. He thinks about things way ahead of time, and he's like, doesn't get flustered.
No, he doesn't. He thinks it through, and then he goes and figures a way to do it and does it. So
And he's not worried.
Nope.
Like, he wasn't worried about
it'll
making
happen.
it. Yeah.
It'll get done.
We'll get there somehow. And then Jimmy, we had some ideas of what Jimmy was going to be like. He was super cool. I mean, he came earlier and hung out with us in our meeting and stuff. That was pretty fun. And then he
Helped us do some skis.
he had to build some more skids for the last trailer. He was fun, and he was positive, which was nice because some things that didn't go right.
He had a lot of know-how too with those skis.
Yeah,
So
for sure, and he was helpful. So we didn't show a behind the scenes of them fixing a lot of the skis or the little tweaks and stuff, but man, it was nice to have those guys with
well,
us.
the knowledge that they had. I mean, some of us we would have gone through 5 or 6 different scenarios to try to fix it, and he would listen to it.
Oh, I was
or
loading that
see
Tiger
it.
Shark on a trailer.
Yeah.
I was gonna load it. It
And-
was done. It was over. And they went and popped the plugs out and cleaned it out and got it running again and said send it. And I'm like,
Or when one of their skis locked, I think it was Merlin's locked up immediately. There's rocks in it.
yeah. And
So-
they just fixed it.
Didn't
which
run
was
it again.
cool.
Just pulled everything out and got it running. So yeah, you guys didn't get to see a ton of that stuff, but
Okay, we're gonna put in a few things. We're gonna talk to your kid and his friend Braden.
neighbor,
It was fun to take our kids with us.
let them have that experience.
Yeah.
They'll remember that the rest of their lives.
You probably didn't have a super dad moment on the river, did you?
You know, my son was in such a hurry that
Didn't ever
I
see him.
never got to see him. So no, I didn't have a super dad moment. Did you?
I did.
Okay.
So we tried to keep it away from everybody, but there was a moment when Tyler was. So I think it was a combination of things. He wanted to get on his phone. He wanted to catch up on life. This was day 2, and he saw everybody like, oh, well, we can take a break and ride in the truck. He's like, I want to go ride in the truck and hang out for a little bit. So he was going to offer his ski to Braden, who was getting off of Jace's because it kept sinking. And I'm like, well, you know, I should have done this a long time ago. Ryan should ride his ski, the blue one that he bought, and I should ride the one that I bought in case it craps out. Because I was almost guaranteed that that thing was not going to make it. And I was still surprised on day 2. And I'm like, I should ride it. Anyway, so I got on the Tiger Shark. You got on the blue one. You gave the other red one to Braden. And it was actually kind of fun, that little stretch that we did, because we were all on pretty fast skis. And we caught up to Paul and those guys at the hydrofoil. But right as we were switching. So Tyler and I parked way over on the other side of the ramp because there was no room. Mm-hmm. And he said he was going to let Braden ride his ski. And I'm like, well, it's probably not the best idea. And so I was a little upset. And he looked at me, and the look in his eyes was he needed a break. And I felt bad because I kind of chewed him out. And I realized that I was proud of him for going that far. So I was proud of him for going that far because he'd never ridden a jet ski before.
So that was his first trip.
He'd never ridden one, ever. We didn't take him because he didn't have a license, and you
Right.
can't ride it unless you're in the river. So I was proud, and I said, I'm sorry, gave him a hug. We had a little moment. He went in the truck and had his break, and then the next stop, he's like, I'm ready to get back on it.
Well, that's cool.
Crap. I already promised that Josh could ride it because Josh had gone down on day 1, and he was the one that fixed the ski, so I felt like I should give him a ride. And then I felt bad for Kyle, and I'm like, okay, Josh, you take it second to last leg, and then Kyle can take it the last leg. And that didn't work out because Kyle was in the truck the last leg somehow, and Josh was hauling Hunter's ski at 45 miles an hour down the river.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well,
yeah.
I'm glad you had that dad moment. That
And it was cool when we were all riding together, you know, father, son, seeing Paul with his boys. It was cool.
it's weird where those moments occur.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes in moments of frustration and anger, and then you recognize, hey, maybe I'm being a little too hard on I've been there.
I recognized it, and I was too hard on him, but I was proud of him for doing it.
But you know what? You weren't the only one. I jumped Caden's butt a little bit on the trip. In fact, a lot. I know Paul jumped his boy's butt quite a bit on the trip.
He did, and, you know, that's dads.
We're looking out for our boys.
Dads always want to push the boys to do more and to do better. And, you know, they listen, even though they don't seem like they are. They listen. And it was cool. Lots of dads and boys hanging out. You didn't see Brad or his son too much, but they were like tight the whole way.
And they didn't have GoPros, so yeah, you didn't get to see that. But yeah, Brad and Nolan were together the whole time. And Brad took his second son.
Well, not his son, but his worker that helps him all the time.
And he treats him like a son.
Dude, he let him ride the Wave Blaster.
Yeah.
That's like, those are like sought after. Anyway. So, yeah, there was probably more times that we could have enjoyed things, but we were running the show, which was hard. It was hard to run the show. 19 freaking skis.
God.
That was a mess when we unloaded all those.
I cannot. I still to this day, 19 skis.
19 is a lot of freaking jet skis.
A lot of freaking skis, man.
And okay, so the question was, how come we didn't ride together? Well, if you've ever ridden in a river, there's not a lot of room, especially when they've got the channel markers. Sometimes there's only wide enough to fit a barge.
You can only realistically do 3 to, in some of those areas, 3 to 6 wide, maybe.
And what happens is there were some of them that were Yamahas that had pissers. So they were shooting water up in the air, and you can't ride too close to them or behind them because they'll splash you.
Didn't Merlin go and cut a couple of those?
No, Jimmy went and cut a
Oh,
couple
Jimmy
of them.
did?
He got his knife out and sliced the pissers. Anyway, so there were some of those, plus some skis were faster than others. So people were adjusting for that. And when you're riding with like 5 or 6 other people and all those wakes, it's kind of a pain.
So you wouldn't think those jet skis kick out much of a wake, but on the river,
Trying to ride behind somebody,
to ride one of those wakes, it literally throws
sucks.
you.
It pulls and it throws.
It's like doing endurance racing. So
we rode together for like the first 2 miles.
realized that wasn't
And then we started
A
spreading
reality.
out, and we really spread out. So it was like 2 would go and 2 more would go, and then 2 or 3 would go, and that's basically how it went the whole way. And it was kind of cool coming around a corner and seeing way up ahead of you just the 2 splashes. You could see the guys running ahead of you.
And that made it kind of fun for me because as I saw those splashes way up, I'm like,
You wanted to
I
go
gotta,
catch 'em?
I gotta catch them. So it gave me something to shoot for when I saw that up there.
But that's why we didn't ride together. It wasn't feasible in the river. We were spread out pretty far. So when we showed up at the end, there was groups. You know, here comes these 3 or 4. Here comes these 2. Here comes these 3.
And it would have been nice to have everybody roll up at once.
We wanted a couple of drone shots of it, but
it just
after that first couple of miles, it
Yeah.
just wasn't feasible. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yep.
So the question we've gotten, would we do this again? I think that night when we got home, the answer would be absolutely not. That was crazy.
Like a woman giving birth type thing. I don't know. I haven't been there. But, yeah, absolutely not at the end of the first night home. But afterwards, we kept thinking of all the good times and the memories.
It was actually pretty freaking fun.
I would do it again with a smaller group,
Yeah,
less
smaller.
logistics.
We would change things, that's for sure. But it was fun.
So, yes, the answer is astoundingly, I would do it again in a heartbeat.
What was your favorite moment on the river?
My favorite moment was pulling into Cooper's Landing at the end of the evening. It was me and Merlin, and there were a bunch of people sitting there watching. I think there were people there to see them,
I think so.
and we pulled in, and I was able to screw around for a bit, throw some waves, roost some people.
And then Merlin told you to get the F down there.
Well, then I went and parked it, and then I had to go get the effing people, according to Merlin. Those effing idiots. That's what he said. Go get those effing idiots. So, anyway, that was my favorite moment.
Man, we had planned to be there early, and it would have been fun to mess around at Cooper's Landing for a while, but we were just too late and too wore out.
What was your favorite moment?
You know, once we got to Roachport, right before I-70, those freaking rock walls
Yeah.
along the side,
Oh, yeah.
they were awesome. And it was nice because I'm like, oh, I know where I'm at. We're not far. We literally are almost there. And I started to get excited. I'm like, man, this is pretty. This is like the nicest part of the river. It was super cool.
So all those bluffs along there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was cool. There was a lot of cool things that happened, but the river is prettier than people give it credit. It is a muddy, nasty thing to walk in or to ride, but it's pretty to
It
look
is.
at.
Beautiful river.
And it was ripping.
I just don't ever want to drown in it.
No. Speaking of drown, so we lost a bunch of items. Did you lose anything
Well,
besides the sunscreen?
No, yeah. So I got to address this. This pisses me off. I just threw all my crap in my bucket in the hole of my ski at the beginning, and then just ripped around like a jagoff, and really screwed things up. When I opened up my cubby hole, one of the tops had blown off of the sunblock and got sunblock all
Everywhere.
over my GoPros.
Everywhere.
Everything. Everything. Not just GoPros, everything.
And what are you going to clean it in? A muddy river?
Muddy river. So I was constantly trying to wipe the screens off on the GoPro, and did you lose anything?
I lost my sunglasses.
Oh, I'd have been pissed.
It takes all of a second and a half for you to lose them and never see them again.
So mine came off my head, but
Mine was, I took them off my eyes, put them up on my hat.
did
and
you
then
have
I-
one of those bungee things?
No, and then
Oh,
I'd
sick.
forget and I'd take off. And then they went.
So
and I'm
right
like,
before I left,
"Whoa!"
I got one of those bungee things, and mine went in the river, and I'm willing to drown for my Oakleys. I'm not gonna lie. So
Well, mine
went
weren't
in
Oakleys.
after.
I knew mine were probably going to die, so I took some cheap ones. Anyway, yeah, as soon as they hit the surface of the water and start going under, they're gone. You can't see them.
Well, and then you know they're going to hit the mud and sink even more. So it's let it go. Let it go. So if you guys want to go in the future, I recommend doing something like this with your buddies or your family members or whatever. Doing something as massive as we did. Hold off.
We went big. He told me to go big. I went effing big.
Too big.
I brought the Fab Rats
Yeah, that was
to
awesome.
Missouri.
That was awesome.
There's not many people that can say that.
And we're lifelong friends now at this point with Merlin and Fab Rats and Jimmy. So this was awesome to make some new friends.
Yeah.
And build our relationship with them, because we had met them before.
Yeah.
But to kind
To
of
sit down,
enshrine-
hang out, sit down around a campfire, and
Yep.
do that kind of stuff with them is pretty dang cool. Plus, to be the ones that say we brought them to Missouri, they came and rode the river with us. It was fun. It was fun.
So this is the Pest Control guys. We appreciate you guys tuning in for this river trip.
After the run episode, it was more like a podcast. but
Yeah.
that's okay.
Hey, grab your popcorn. That's all I gotta say. Oh, too late.
Too late. It's over. We'll get back to some pest control stuff now.
That's right.
And we'll think about maybe running a river again someday. Not this
Not
week.
soon.
Not this month. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.
See ya.